Today on Xtreme, from boxes of parts to the ultimate trail rig, Ian and Jessi bring us the final stages of Project A.J. Plus, it's not the bush leagues of Baja, but it's close. Off-road racing for the working man.
Welcome to Xtreme 4x4 and our final installation on Project A.J. If you remember when we started this project, we told you that we weren't going to take forever to get it done.
That's right, we only set aside 5 weeks for this build, and that's a lot of work in a short period of time considering everything for this truck came out of a catalog. We didn't start with a donor vehicle, but in the end, we know all that hard work will be worth it.
So today's the day where we're going to put in all of our finalizing touches, like the roll cage, the seats, the drive shafts, the welder, the air tanks, the cooling fans, the radiator, the hoses. Basically, we got a lot of work we need to get done.
And it all starts at the front of the engine with this serpentine belt kit we got from GM Performance Parts. Now this comes with a brand new water pump, new power steering pump, brand new alternator, and the bracketry even has provisions to add an AC compressor if needed. Now it includes all the bolts and the hardware that's needed to turn the front of your small block into a one-belt system. Install the new water pump to the block, bolt the AC compressor bracket to the head, put on the new pulleys, and bolt the power steering bracket on. One item we're not going to install that came with that serpentine belt kit is this factory GM alternator. Instead, we're going to use this high output version we got from Mobiarc that's going to help power an item that every hardcore trail rig should have.
Which just so happens to be a welder. This is a compact underhood Mobiarc welder. It delivers an alternating current and is fully automatic, which means that the power goes from the alternator through this unit to charge the battery. But unlike other welders where you may have to flip a switch, this one automatically knows that you're in welding mode. It works like a normal arc welder, and you can even control the amperage output by using this little hand control. With the bracket installed and the cable and wires connected to the back of the head unit mounted in place. The red and black 4-gauge wire can be routed through the firewall and connected to the battery terminals. Connect the yellow 4-gauge wire to the alternator post, followed by the ground.
With a water pump on the front of our small block, we can finally get a radiator into this grill shell. Now we chose this Quadratec Be Cool fully polished piece because it's a direct fit for CJ7s and it's going to bolt right in place on the grill shell. Now to keep our cool, we're going to use this Hayden high performance fan. Now these things have reversible blades so they can work as a pusher or a puller unit, and they come in 3 colors. We chose red to match the rest of the Jeep. Now we're going to test fit it behind the radiator and in front to determine the best place for it to go.
We still need a throttle cable and pedal assembly for AJ. We went ahead and took this brake pedal out of a used Jeep and we're going to put it in our new Jeep. But we went ahead and chose this super slick floor mounted low car throttle pedal and an LS1 cable to go with it.
We have this fan set up right now in front of the radiator to draw the cold air through it, but we have a clearance problem. You can see that the housing for the fan is hitting our grill shell. So what we're going to do is we're going to clearance this grill shell to pull that back, and then we'll just put the cover back on with the motor. Now it's a tight fit in a Jeep with a small block, and I've seen guys take the same fan and just mount it on the outside of the grill, but we really want to sort of keep the front end kind of clean.
To go with our low car throttle cable, we also had them send us this high-tech kickdown kit for our transmission. Not only does the steel braids make it look nice, but it also provides a good source for heat protection.
To control that 700 R4 we got from TCI, we had B&M ship us their light truck mega shifter. Now this is a full ratchet shifter, and it's easy to go from reverse to drive with only one hand, which is a huge benefit when you're off-road. Plus, with this adjustable bracket assembly, you can make this thing fit in almost any truck.
The Rock Chalk 60 that we got from Curry has a parking brake system built into the rear disc setup. So we went back to low car and got one of these universal pedal kits and the front cable to hook it all together.
And while Jessi puts the pedal to the metal, we'll shift gears and install our shifter.
So stay tuned with us after the break, and we'll be right back with you.
Get it? Break.
Shift gears.
Next, Baja Buggies without having to spend big Baja bucks. Blue collar desert racing when Xtreme 4x4 continues.
We've been getting a lot of emails asking us what this blue piping is that we have running around the shop. Well, it's Garage Pack Airlines. And the nice thing about this lightweight powder-coated aluminum piping is that it's easy to install. Anyone can do it. And the best thing is when you add tools like our ABS Products Bead Blaster, you just need to run a new line to that tool, disconnect a junction block like we did here, and slip in an elbow.
The Xtreme 4x4 Event of the Week is brought to you by Fram, America's #1 oil filter.
There's nothing more satisfying than building your own rig and then going out and racing it. This group of off-road enthusiasts do just that. They're part of the Valley Off-Road Racing Association.
For 29 years, the Vora Series in Northern California has given up-and-comers and weekend warriors a place to race.
It's more for the average working guy that can afford to come out and put something together, come out and have fun and have some competitive racing against one another.
These are guys that are enthusiasts. They race out of their garage, low budget. It's a good starter place for guys to get started.
Everybody from lawyers to doctors to guys that are pounding nails for a living and whatnot. So it seems to be an affordable racing for people who want to have a good time.
Whether racing on the short course or in the desert, Vora racers never go easy.
They like to trade paint. It's like a NASCAR race. It's pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, get sideways, get dirty, get some air, have some fun.
When you're out there, it's hardcore. There's competition. That's just the way it is.
Awesome, awesome, awesome.
There are no big paychecks or million-dollar sponsorship deals. These drivers are out here because they just love racing.
I think racing is racing, and whether you have some older buggies or brand new stuff, it's still in the heart of the guys that are doing it. It's basically my life. I don't take any vacation. This is my vacation. It's just a lot of fun, and my whole life is pretty much dedicated to doing it.
It's a gas.
Patty Hayas has been on the gas in Class 7 for 10 years.
There's nothing ladylike about it. It's good, clean, dirty fun.
And she's having fun beating the man.
I've got 2 championships under my belt, missed the last couple of years by the skin of my teeth. I'm not gonna let anybody close the door on me.
These days, women racers are common. However, busting through that door still has its challenges.
I wasn't always real forward, not very backseat, laid back, a little quiet. And racing's actually helped me kind of come out a little bit and be strong and be smart and be professional. And you always gotta be better than the next guy. You gotta act better than the next guy. It takes a long time to get there sometimes, but once you're good, you got it, you're there.
Around the pits, her fellow competitors agree she's got it.
Patty's a fierce competitor out there, a very good driver.
Patty smoked the 2-mile Sacramento track to finish second.
I just want to go out, hit the track, do the best that I can do, and with the equipment that I have, and just be good. I do my dream.
2 years ago, Steve Sullivan discovered Vora's open class and was hooked.
It's the funnest thing in the world to see if you can outfox or outsmart the other guy and go home and make the car work. And if you do that, I mean, it's pretty gratification. It's a good deal.
Last year, he foxed his way to the championship.
This is a car to beat. Last year, we took the Class 1 title. And for an old car, it seemed to be doing us pretty well.
Steve gave it new life by swapping out the VW engine for the V8 power of the Corvette.
It wasn't a Volkswagen guy, so used that thing for a boat anchor, went down in the junkyard, and the motor was $4,000. It's a really light motor, but it puts out a ton of torque and a ton of horsepower. Everything a guy needs, and it's very calculating power. And this car's got 16 inches of travel in the front and 14 in the rear, so we suffer that way, and we try to make up for it with the horsepower.
To win out here, the driver needs more than a fat engine.
At this level of racing, the guy really has to be able to you know, to tear apart the motor and the rear end and define your problems and, you know, do some welding and that kind of stuff. You can't pay a guy to go to a prep shop, you know, so it's really important to have some mechanical, you know, intuition.
For the race win, Sullivan collected some coin. But for Steve, this isn't about making money.
The money you get a payback, and it barely pays for, you know, feeding the crew over the weekend right now, but the bragging rights are worth way more than what the dollars are. Time in the garage, see, the wife's not mad at me. She brought me champagne, so I guess we're good for another race. The smile on my face ought to describe it, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Bet that $1,100 that Sullivan took home for the win sure is going to put a big dent in his engine payment.
I personally would have left the 4-cylinder Volkswagen engine in there. My first car was a Baja Bug, and with the right displacement and turbo setup, those things fly.
Make sure you stick with us through the break. When we come back, we'll be putting the Jeep on the hoist and we'll be doing some stuff to the underside.
Welcome back to Xtreme 4x4. With the Jeep up on the hoist, we can continue finishing this truck before it hits the trail for a real-world test.
And right now we're going to be slipping in the drive shafts. When we had the Jeep sitting on the ground and everything was bolted on, we took all the measurements that were required by JE Reel so they could build us a set of their super tough custom-built drive shafts.
With shafts on the Jeep, we can go ahead and start planning our exhaust system. Now, MagnaFlow Performance Exhaust makes this great 2¼ inch full stainless steel hot rod kit to put a custom exhaust on almost anything. We also had them send their fully polished stainless steel muffler. Now, this is a flow-through design with no baffles, and it's fully welded, and it's going to give excellent sound and great performance. We also had them throw in a tip for where it exits the vehicle, and the last thing was a catalytic converter. Now, we're not going to put this Jeep on the street, so emissions aren't really an issue, but if this little beauty can clean up some of the air we got to breathe on the trail, it's well worth the money. Because of tight clearances, we're going to have to build our own crossover pipe. That's what makes MagnaFlow's Universal Hot Rod Kit nice. Plenty of pipe to work with. Next, I'll install the catalytic converter, then the muffler, test fit a couple pieces of pipe. I'll cut a hole in the body for the exhaust. Then install the tip.
With all the underside components in place, we can finally finish this skid plate. We didn't want to send it out to get rhino lined just in case we had an interference with our drive shafts or exhaust, which we do. So I'm definitely going to have to cut some out here for more clearance for the drive shaft. And then for the transmission pan, I'm going to have to bring that hoop in closer so we're not interfering with our exhaust. Okay, I'm ready to weld the whole thing together now. You ready? You ready?
Oh, nice fit. With the drive line in our Jeep, we can start to pull some serious power out of our small block. Now, Fuel Air and Spark Technology, or FAST for short, builds this custom tunable XFI setup to pull serious power out of fuel injection engines. Our kit comes with a fully labeled wiring harness, all the sensors that we need to hook it up to our small block. Now, the software to drive it gets loaded onto a Windows-based PC, so you can tune it while you're driving. It has an onboard diagnostic feature as well as data logging, so you can keep track of every sensor in the engine.
We built this engine using GM fast burn aluminum heads and the ramjet intake that you would normally find on a GM crate engine. But we punched and stroked this to a 383. So the factory ECU will give us a good torque curve, but we can do better than that by using that fast system. Right now, you just got to get all this wiring out. Welcome back to Xtreme and the end of Project A.J. Once we're finished today, this thing will be ready for the trail. All we have to do is fab up roll cage, which leads us to a question that we get asked a lot.
And that is, where do we get the idea for our roll cages? And more importantly, how do we know where to bend the tube and where to notch it to get a tight fit? The information we give you today may be pretty specific to our tube shark bender and notcher as part of our shark pool, but everything we tell you here can be adapted to almost any bender out there. And the first thing we're going to do is bend a 90-degree bend on a piece of scrap tube. We already calculated the spring back for our bender by following the manufacturer's directions.
When you're building a roll cage, you're going to want to choose a starting point. And in most cases, and with AJ, we're going to start with our main hoop, which is the hoop that goes right up above behind your head and your seats, and then plan the rest of the cage from that point. So, if I measure the distance between the insides of the Jeep, I'm going to start with 53.5 inches.
Before we pulled this piece of tubing out of our bender, we marked the location of this shoe that pulled the tube over the bending die. Then by placing this 90-degree bend in a corner, we can measure to see how much height it's going to take to make a 90-degree bend. And you can see it's going to take 10 inches to accomplish that. Knowing this about our bender, we can take the measurements that Jessi is making and easily build that main hoop.
And it looks as though we're going to need a hoop height of about 48 inches, but I wouldn't have been able to determine that until we had our seats in place.
What do you got?
48 inches.
And how wide?
53.5.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And for our seats, we went ahead and chose our Baird full suspension seats. It's got this red tweed, this super cool carbon fiber vinyl, and it's all on these seat risers that were made specifically for CJ. Now, these Ultra Pro Series seats also have this 3.5-inch higher hip area, which is going to hold us in a lot better. So, since we're not going to have doors, it's going to help prevent us from dying.
Prevent us from dying. With all the measurements for our main hoop, I can go ahead and cut this piece of tubing. I added an extra few inches just to make sure we had enough. We know we want that hoop to be 48 inches off the floor of the Jeep. And now we also know that this bender takes 10 inches to make a 90-degree bend. So we'll set this shoe 38 inches from the end of the tube, and we'll end up with a 48-inch tall hoop. Now I'll also add 1.5 inches to the length just for good measure, so we'll set this at 39.5. Here we go.
As soon as that main hoop is finished, we're going to have to build the rest of the roll cage around it, which involves notching. That can be very tricky. So let's say you have a 90-degree angle, you want your down tube to run at 60 degrees, that means you're going to notch this end at 30 degrees and the opposite end at 60. So all together, it adds up to 180. And when it starts to get real tricky is when you have an angle that's over 90 degrees. This is a 110-degree angle. You're still going to want your down bar at 60, so you have 30 degrees here, 110 degrees here, which leaves that you're going to need 40 degrees here, because altogether, it adds up to 180.
With the hoop tacked in place,
And by using the tips and tricks we just showed you, you can have a cage like this.
now you can see we ran a little different design with this cage. Instead of a front hoop, we took this tube and triangulated back for a little extra strength.
And then we added this extra bend right here for the extra headroom.
Now I know we promised you 5 shows and this thing would be done, but I'm not gonna lie to you, we're out of time. So
Stick with us next week because we'll be finishing all the loose ends and then we'll have our ultimate payoff in 2 weeks. So